And without further ado, I introduce you guys to Julie. Julie, we were just talking a little bit earlier. We are past Crossback at the last retail rally, which I'm pretty excited about. If you guys, if you have nothing going on, October 7th, I would highly encourage you guys to check it out. It's normally held in person, but this year, for obvious reasons, it'll be virtual like many other things. But it's a great lineup of speakers, and I don't just say that because Rick's on there, but there's always something to learn and a great group of folks to connect with for sure. So October 7th, retail rally. And Julie is going to dive into a pretty good subject in this day and age. You know, with everything gone virtual, digital, lacking face-to-face contact, you know, how do you build these critical relationships you need with vendors and business partnerships? So without further ado, Julie.
Thank you so much, Rob.
Yeah.
And thank you everyone for joining me this afternoon. As we were getting all the technology in order, I said when I woke up this morning, it was raining. I was like, oh, that's definitely going to boost some attendance because it'll be easy to stay inside for lunch and enjoy a webinar. But now competing with a beautiful afternoon in Minneapolis, I really appreciate you making time. Looking through the list, I see some familiar faces. I'm thrilled that you're able to join us and happy to make some new connections as well. So for those of you who may not have a ton of background on me and did a little bit of internet scouting before you made the commitment to join the call today, you probably saw an undertone of retail in a lot of what I do, and that's not by accident. I'm in retail consulting, and before launching that business, I was at Target Corporation for, oh goodness, more than 15 years. So retail is absolutely in my blood, and it's a lot of what I focus on, and the clients that I support today are also in the retail space. And without doubt, some of my favorite questions to answer are the who, what, where, how, and why is retail really shifting? But I understand that is not everyone's passion, and rest assured, as Rob and I are talking about a conversation that would be both of interest and of service and support to this community, I really wanted to focus on a conversation that would apply to anyone's business. So whether you're the owner operator of a business or you're part of an organization that you're fantastically proud to support, and we settled on the theme of relationships. And that really is the core of what my business is all about, is helping retailers and their partners build stronger relationships. And the themes and the consistency that I've seen in that work really do apply to virtually any business partnership. And certainly as many aspects of business, and Rob touched on this, have shifted in the COVID response era, business partnerships are one of them. For reasons good and bad, partnerships have been stressed, strained, and in some cases nurtured, but there's a lot that we can do to think through how to elevate those partnerships. And that's really what I want to focus on our conversations today, because connecting with, growing with, and moving forward with your strongest business partners is a way that you can deliver amazing value to your clients and consumers. And I certainly hope to provide a framework for both conversation and insights to be shared today. I was telling Rob again at the outset that I promise I do not have 42 minutes of full content to share with you today. I built in some pause points where I would really appreciate some open conversation. Rob will be monitoring the chat feed for me and feed in questions if and as you have them. And we should have some opportunity for dialogue as well. So even going off mute a time or two would probably be absolutely fine. So please build out the questions as you have them, and we can make some time to discuss. So I understand my background is retail. I did want to level set for the group that when I talk about partners today or suppliers or resources, I'm really talking about any partner at all that you work with to deliver value to your clients and consumers. So that could be your manufacturing facilities and partners, your point of sale system, your accountants, your marketing partners, people who do your packaging teams, even the people who do your media. All of these are partners that help you really bring your business to life. And those partnerships are some of the most valuable assets that your business has. And a lot of times when I'm working with a new client, early conversations that we have are all around who is the right partner, who is the best partner. And I usually do a small reframe to that question, because what I really am passionate about doing is finding the right partner for you. And that doesn't necessarily mean the largest partner, the one with the best website. It really is the best partner for you and your organization and ultimately the clients and the customers that you seek to serve. And a lot of times as an entrepreneur, you're the face of your business, or your brand is the face of your business to your consumer partners. But that isn't always the case, which is why I think it's incredibly important to make sure that your supplier partners, your resource partners, are also in a position to represent your business the way you would want to. Because although they're often behind the scenes, that does sometimes shift. So I'm seeing a couple nods of recognition. The example I'll touch on just to start the conversation is Apple and Foxconn, who many of you may be aware is a supplier of, and they make millions of Apple's iPhones and other Apple products. Now, a decade or so ago, you probably wouldn't have been familiar with the name Foxconn unless you were in the telecommunications industry and were looking for a manufacturer. But some of you will be familiar with Foxconn because they were looking to build a facility in the US. Others might be familiar with them because of exposés from the New York Times and other resources that communicated some of the really horrific conditions that were associated with working at Foxconn. And I don't bring this up in light, or certainly not in jest. It was a very serious situation, and Apple continues to manage this partnership very, very carefully. But what was so jarring when these reports were first surfaced was that they were in such conflict with the brand and the commitment that Apple made to its consumers. And you think about Apple, like their products are supposed to be beautiful, easy to use, all about creativity and connecting people. You really were given a position to wonder, were those truly the brand values that Apple found important when they were working with a producer that was clearly not committed to that in the same way? Now, Apple certainly recovered from the initial backlash, and they continue to work with Foxconn, but this conversation has come up multiple times over the last decade plus, and it really just calls to mind why it's incredibly important to make sure every partner that you have, again, supporting that value, supporting that brand promise that you have for your consumers, really shows up in a way that represents you the way you want to be seen and the way your business is committed to being seen. And it's not always about mitigating risk. There's really great reasons to deepen partnerships as well that further more strategic or business growth opportunities. And one that I love to bring up is Burberry. So they've worked with a longtime supplier to supply leather goods. And this is a tricky business. From a raw materials perspective, there's a lot of risk in capturing and securing this raw material. But Burberry built an incredibly close relationship where they're able to manage their inventory very closely, manage costs very closely. It allowed them to be more flexible in bringing new products to the market. And it also helped them maintain their inventory challenges and make sure that they weren't overproducing, which put them in a different level of risk. And the partnership got so close that it actually made sense for Burberry to outright buy its supplier partner in order to continue to build and deepen that relationship even further. But they have been really successful up until COVID onset, of course, with using this partnership as a way to continue to grow their business. So really, while you're thinking about partnerships, I'd encourage you to think about it in a few different ways. First of all, the partnerships that you build can often help you gain unexpected insights, either on the product or the service that you're providing or the consumers that you're supporting. So the stronger your partnerships are, the more openness there's going to be to sharing those insights and ultimately elevating the value of what you're providing, which is a fantastic way to build trust throughout your supply chain, or however you frame that partnership, all the way to your consumer, and ultimately helping you build a strong business and build a business in collaboration with those partners. But certainly not a surprise that I'm bringing the conversation around to this point. Like many parts of business, and Rob identified, there's so much strain being put on business partnerships now that I've really started to hear the conversation shift. So it's not about just building or elevating the partnerships that are out there. There's a lot of rapidity and swift changes that are needing to happen because business partners that you've counted on for a long time may have closed. They may have fallen out of the level of service that you've come to expect, or from a pricing perspective, you've started to see them show up and charge different. Or there's partners that you may not feel comfortable working with anymore. And I'm putting this under the general bucket of cancel culture. And certainly not to be political, but just more to bring up that the partners that you may have relied on to bring a business service to life are no longer the partners you feel like you can count on. Facebook was a really interesting example over the summer. Who would have thought in 2019 that Facebook would face serious backlash, even boycotting, for their positioning in the market? Well, if you advertised with Facebook this summer, that was saying something about what you were comfortable supporting as a business. And again, similar to the Apple situation, I think this is a very fluid conversation. But I think as business owners and leaders within businesses, there has been a lot that's shifted in these partnerships and how to nurture and build them. And what I'd like to discuss today is a framework, or really an approach that you can take to think about how you're finding the right partners, both for your business, for today, and I would even say ... into tomorrow, and how that looks to evolve. So the approach I use is very straightforward. And I would not be surprised to hear that the pieces of this approach are absolutely something that most business owners and leaders are managing today. And I'll take you through this approach, which my intent is really to, and hope for this conversation, is to give you a way to think about those partnerships in isolation, in totality, and take you through in a very systematic and hopefully fairly efficient process, so that you're able to be very nimble and adjusting and elevating those partnerships where you need them. Or in the case that you might be bringing up new partnerships and onboarding new business partners into your matrix, or the group of partners that you rely on, that this is something that you can pull out and have just a really quick retrieval, and it takes you through. So, excited to get started. The first step, fairly straightforward, is review. But maybe conversely, in a review of business partnerships, I think the first step is actually a review of your own business, to be perfectly candid. And there's a few reasons for this. But when your business launched, or your organization launched its business, within its business plan, there was a vision, mission, value statements that really positioned your business in a specific place to deliver specific value and differentiated value to your consumers. And for many organizations, this is something that's kept evergreen, and it's something you revisit constantly and continue to embed in the work that you do. But it doesn't often shift a lot. But with the onset of COVID response, we're hearing that a lot of businesses are needing to take some time to reflect and adjust where their businesses are going, or frankly, see their businesses shifting without a lot of time to reflect on how their businesses will continue to evolve. And for those of you who were fortunate to hear from Alex Kulkran earlier this summer, I thought he really articulated well how certain businesses can think about responding to and shifting in the COVID age response. And there's a couple different ways that he highlighted just beautifully. One was, if you think about an organization like a car manufacturer who's now making ventilators. They are likely still making cars and will make ventilators as long as there's a value to offer to their consumers. They certainly aren't looking to do an additional business that's in conflict with their business plan or their business vision or values, but they certainly aren't looking to pivot the direction of their business fully into this new space. It's more of a value add and offering that they're contributing to the greater good, but they will stop making ventilators. They will continue to prioritize producing cars. Other organizations have had to make major shifts because their niche in the industry either has disappeared or rapidly shifted. And if you're a business that's navigating that space, certainly the temptation is to move as quickly as possible to keep up with the changing dynamics in your industry. But I'd absolutely recommend that before you start thinking about the new partners that you might be bringing to the table to help you on this journey, support your efforts on this journey, that you take that moment to reground yourself and what are you able to offer? What will continue to be the core tenets of your business? And if they need to shift, make that choice just very intentionally. Because it's incredibly important that at the end of the day, you are landing on the why of what you're in business for, because it helps communicate to the consumers and clients that you seek to serve what you believe. And those are going to be the most dedicated and committed clients that you can work with. But once you've taken that moment to reassess your why and your business go forward, the next step in thinking through who your partners are really thinking about who is that who. Are you able to move forward and continue to make progress on growing your business with the same partners that you've always had? And do you potentially need to add new resources because the original partners that you've worked with are no longer available, or because you are making a market shift and you need to bring on new partners? So I've included just some examples that I've had in my experiences. I've worked with my clients, certainly as certainly within the industry study. In retail, you're looking for opportunities to deliver more quickly. Other businesses are shifting their models completely. You might have had an owner model and then you're shifting to a renter model. I know I've had to shift a lot of my work remote, so I'm now offering online services. So I need partners to support me in a new way so I can show up online and stay connected, but continue to offer the value that's meaningful to me. So here is the first place I'll pause. And if you have some either considerations or new partners that you're looking to onboard or connect with, I'd love to either have you unmute yourself and put that idea out to the group, or certainly type in the notes in the comment section, and Rob can take those comments. As I mentioned, we'll have a little bit of time for workshopping, and it really helps me to understand who are the types of partners teams are looking for, and I can help customize some of the conversation from here on out.
Hey, Julie, one of the questions that came in earlier, what did you mean in one of the previous slides you had cancel culture? What can you define what the cancel culture is?
I think the cancel culture means, I'll say it this way. I think the cancel culture is I see it within the business space, is choosing on principle to stop doing business with someone. So with Facebook, if you didn't appreciate their approach on privacy, or you wouldn't want to be associated with them because that doesn't align with your business values. Patagonia recently came out and they had some fairly colorful language on the tags of some of their products. They are committed to supporting environmental health and safety. And for businesses or consumers that aren't supportive of how they're coming to market, they probably aren't going to buy Patagonia product anymore. Patagonia made that choice and we're fine with that because they want to speak to their people. But for other people, their approach is really off-putting. So that idea of cancel culture is, at some point, there's a line that's crossed, that's no longer a brand or service that you want to associate yourself with. And it has fallen on fairly political lines recently. So there's a lot of sensitivity to that concept.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Hey, Julie, quick questions. This is Alex. Even before COVID hit, I think we saw kind of a shift from a lot of global offshoring because of the tariffs to more domestic partnerships. Are you seeing any trends now, particularly in your clients, to finding more domestic partners and more manufacturing bases that you don't have to wait for a shipping container?
Oh, absolutely, Alex. And you are giving me an invitation to have another 60 minutes of conversation on this. So I'll keep myself to just a couple minutes. But yes, that's a perfect example of how your business might need to show up differently, especially in the apparel space. For those of you who may not be close to the retail manufacturing space, a garment can take anywhere from a handful of weeks to a few months to design. But if you are producing overseas, that purchase commitment is done months and months in advance. And so when stores shut down in March, there were literally millions of units and dollars worth of inventory that people physically could not buy because they weren't going out, and it physically sat in their stores, and in many cases got donated, or in some cases just destroyed. So going forward, as we are navigating a new normal, there are many sectors of the retail industry and manufacturing industry that are looking to shorten that lead time of production, doing even things like just-in-time production. So your article of clothing or shoe may be 3D printed after you order it. So it's literally made just for you, shipped to your home, but there's no risk on the retailers or the manufacturers side that there'll be inventory that doesn't get purchased. So that's absolutely a shift in the market to make product more flexible, on time, and then more customized to the consumer's needs, because you frankly have the ability to do that when you're not trying to guess and make millions of units 6 to 9 months before they're going to be sold. You can make the unit of one that you know someone is committed to purchase. Wonderful. Okay. Well, from there, once we've defined our why and the who we're looking for, the next important step is really to think through defining what success looks like. And this is probably something, if you've been working with a partner for a long time, you really instinctively understand what success looks like in this space. And you may not have a very formal process of identifying exactly what the most important things are about that partnership. But if you step back and thought for a moment of the attorney that I work with or the manufacturer that I work with, you thought about the key ways that you're able to find that this is the right partner for you, it'd probably be fairly easy to do. So I find this step absolutely essential though when you're thinking about bringing a new partner on board, either because, as I mentioned earlier, your original partner is no longer available, or you are looking for a new partner to meet a new need. Being really thoughtful on what are you looking for. So it's a little bit when you think back on dating, when you were looking for a partner, or perhaps certainly continue that search. What are the things that are must-haves for you? What needs to be true about this partner, of where they are located? More and more work is going remote, so that's not always of concern anymore, but maybe there's differentiators. Maybe you need a certain level of tech support, bandwidth support, response time, product arrival, so on-time ship timing. You might also need your partners to show up in a different way. So there's certain characteristics that they need to be able to ride fully organic products or farm to table products that they can only be grown 30 miles outside of your target zone. There are really specific ways that you can define what that success looks like. So I mentioned earlier that I'm doing certainly more work, like many of us are, online. So a person that I added to my team was someone to help me more with the tech support. I needed support on how to make sure all of my platforms were integrated and I can provide really great value to my clients. Well, it was important for me to understand what are the things to look for when I'm trying to find this new partner, so I can ask intelligent questions and then ultimately know if there's success being delivered from this partnership. So that's where the metrics piece comes in, is understand how are you going to measure those key couple of things that are going to set you up to be successful in working with this partner. So often this is defined early on in a contract that you write, but understand that with some business partnerships you have, you might not have a formal contract. So really make sure you're supplementing and understanding what that measure of success looks like. And it can be very simple, very binary. It can be a yes, no, you're located here or not here. But it could also be measured, levels of on-time ship. This is when the product arrives. This is my bandwidth service. Whatever that looks like for you, make sure you're taking the time to research and validate the key measurements. And it doesn't need to be a ton. Just a handful of those key measurements will be enough to really help you focus on and ensure that you're building the partnerships that are able to take you where you need to go, especially if you're moving in a very new place for your business. So some of the examples that I've been navigating this summer are around, for example, pricing. If you originally were positioning your service offering as a luxury, high-end, high-touch offering, and now you find that people want something that's more bite-sized, more on the go. So that could be the service offering of offering a webinar, or it could be the product offering. You don't want to sell high-end products anymore. You want to balance yourself more mass or mid-market. So you probably need new partners, and they have to have a different pricing structure. So that might be one of the key things that you're needing to understand about this partnership. Maybe they need to be more innovative, that you found that your niche in the market is really collapsing. So you need to make sure that your partners are really ahead of market trends, that they have the best technology, or they are really great problem solvers, because your market is so dynamic that you don't know exactly where it needs to go. So you need to understand how are they staying ahead of the market and keeping their employees trained, for example. So that might be something that you are looking for. What's been really interesting about the business shifts that I've been a part of discussing this summer is that when you are moving out of that comfort zone, and I would say, in my industry, retail has never really been in a comfort zone per se of being without evolution, but there are certain things you could count on to be true. And a lot of those quote unquote certain things have really gone out the window. So I'm curious if there's other new measurements of success or metrics that others have encountered this summer that was either a surprise to them, or they are still trying to think through, like, how might you want to address a new what, or a new measure of success in your business that you either haven't thought about a way before, or something that was a challenge for you.
I'll throw something out there about just the willingness to do things virtually. Before in my world, it was almost there's no way that you're going to work with clients virtually. I mean, especially talk about
Mhm.
personal finance. And,
Absolutely.
all of a sudden now, everybody loves this whole thing called Zoom. And even
Mhm.
my grandpa understand what Zoom is, and they've gone a little bit beyond Facebook, right? So
Yeah.
just taking everything virtually, I think, has been a game changer for sure.
Mhm. No, I think that's a great example, Rob. And Zoom is, I think, the perfect. It's certainly not a cancel culture, but it's a perfect example of why Zoom works really well in a lot of different scenarios. But from an information security perspective, I know it does present certain risks. And so there might be some businesses where you do not do Zoom calls because of the concerns around, excuse me, what was being put in place from a data security and a privacy perspective. So yeah, absolutely. That's a perfect example of a model or a new partner that you'd really want to research to understand, is Microsoft Teams a better option for me versus a Zoom or WebEx or what some of the options are. Brad, I saw you click off. Oh, hey, Alex.
Yeah, quick question. I was thinking about, and you and I have talked about this before, but like the strength of brands and the difference in how people perceive brands now. Because,
Mhm.
like, for example, my family and I went on a vacation a couple weeks ago, and normally we would have gone like the Airbnb route, but we stayed at Marriott's because I knew they were going to clean everything. I knew it was a reputable company that was going to deliver a certain level of service that
Mhm.
wasn't something I was willing to risk anymore. So, like, are you seeing other things where the establishment of a brand is kind of muscling out smaller players as things move forward?
I think it's the power of the brand, where it's really entrenched itself in value, cleanliness. So there's something that got you thinking about Marriott and associating it with cleanliness. So whether it was just that they were too big to risk not being clean, like they absolutely at all costs would keep um, any reporting of a COVID outbreak in their hotels. They have a vested interest in that, versus one person on Airbnb might not be as vested in maintaining the standards. And I don't think you're alone in that. I think that is a broad trend. So whether it's nutrition, cleanliness, and health, those really primal interests, if a brand is closely identified and has been able to successfully message that commitment, they are going to pull a larger group of audiences. But I would say still a counterbalance to that is that there are consumers that continue to want customized and boutique offerings and services. And so if a brand can communicate that they know and see you and know and see what's important to you, the tools today, and I don't need to tell a room full of entrepreneurs this, but the tools today to really customize a message are so amazing that you can still break through that kind of that more general brand overview with specificity if that brand or that smaller business knows your interests and your concerns in a way that it just makes it feel like home for you. That's incredibly compelling to be seen and heard in a way of driving business loyalty.
I got one for you, Julie. There seems to be a trend of AI really being incorporated into a lot of sales or company engagement with customers. And I see that as something that it's eliminating salespeople, but I also see it as a chance for companies to really expand on maximizing the experience that prospects and customers and clients have with companies, because I think everybody really longs for that time where you can pick up the phone and call somebody and talk to them about a challenge that you're having. I mean, you can't call Facebook,
Yeah.
you can't call Amazon, you can't call Google. These are huge technology companies that have a tremendous impact on our culture, but the human interaction is really missing. How do you see the human interaction and AI working together and complementing companies? And it's a broad question, so it gives you a lot of space to answer it however you want, because there's no way of proving you're wrong.
My favorite kind of questions.
Yeah,
Well,
thanks.
I think what AI does, or what it can do in a way that's valuable, is free us up. And when I say us, I do mean throughout the organization, in a way that you can be more productive. If you're able to gain insights from AI because steps 1 through 7 of the process have already been completed, they've been validated, and you now have a recommendation. So in your example as a salesperson, if you're able to pick up a conversation with a client more informed about exactly what they want, exactly what the pain point that you're trying to solve, or the hope that you're trying to achieve with them, there are ways that that work can be set up and drive even more value. So that's where I get excited about the use of AI. Certainly within the retail and manufacturing space, AI has the ability to create a great deal more transparency that didn't exist in the past. So you can have much more confidence in the data that you are relying on to run your business and offer services, that isn't necessarily replacing a human, but it is allowing connectivity and visibility that we never really had before. So it's filling a gap. And then where the human picks up and what they're able to offer is then again, much more informed. So I don't know about you, but this summer I've gotten increasingly accurate shipment timing from the carriers that are shipping me information. And when I have a customer concern issue, I can show up as a consumer much more informed with my question, and I can usually get better information back. So I feel like where AI can be the add, it's incredibly exciting, but absolutely with the recognition that there's certain work that AI is able to streamline and address in a way that humans weren't able to as effectively in the past. So
Yeah, and I've experienced a return with Amazon. It's just fascinating how they have a technology incorporated, and also a return with Costco. And I did a return with Costco, and I printed off the mailing label. I put it on the package. I went online. I said, as soon as it was picked up by UPS, it was scanned and I was refunded that very moment. And Amazon, it was scanned and it says we're processing it. And then I think when they got the shipment, then they ended up giving the credit on the credit card. But it is fascinating. But at the same time, with that delivery time, there was most inaccurate information possible, and it seems like first-class mail took 4 days because of the humans that were involved in delivering it, and how we can't really predict whether or not somebody's going to come to work at Amazon or the post office to deliver something. So all of a sudden, Amazon Prime is not 2 days, it's 4 days, and first class is 4 days, and priority mail is 3 to 4 days. And it's like, wow, how can we really, so we can see the contrast between AI and the human interaction is very predictable, but doesn't really collaborate well in some cases. So it's tough to guess.
And it's all based on the assumptions that are built into the logic. I think you're exactly right in that. So yeah, another topic that would fill another amazing 60.
I know, and I don't want
maybe
to
Rob will
prolong
invite us
everything because I'm giving you more content in the future. But
no,
right.
I'm taking copious notes.
Okay, who's next?
Well, actually, I think I'll move on to the next point of the conversation because we're already starting to shift. I think the dialogue there already. So the third step, or the third thing I'd offer for you to consider in this process is really now the assessment. You know who you want to work with. You know how you're going to be able to measure that success with them. Now let's see how they're doing. And as I've pulled up this slide, and I've talked about this concept with others in the past, I sometimes get some wide eyeballs. So if this is a process that's maybe not super formal or systematized, operationalized within your organization, and you don't do a really formal assessment of partner performance, this can seem like a lot. But across the board, no matter how complex your organization is, you are able to find a way to assess the performance of your partners in a way that should be meaningful and unlock value for you. Yes, the Targets, the Walmarts of the world are able to use a massive ERP system, which gives them a ton of data about how their businesses are performing. But what I would encourage smaller, more mid-sized businesses to do is really focus on the key partners that are essential for you to deliver value to your consumers. And as we talked about on the defining section, really focus on the couple things that are going to help you understand that the ship is going in the right direction. And if you need to go deeper in your data and tie larger KPIs together to understand performance, I'd absolutely encourage you to do that. Go to the level that's going to unlock value for you. But then I would also say no further. There's only so far you want to go with the assessment, because honestly, when you get that information, the true value then is what you're able to do with that information. So once you've right-sized your assessment approach, the first step really is to think about how are the suppliers themselves performing. So you'll want to gather the data on, these are my partners that shipped on time. This is the bandwidth of the service level I experienced when I was on my Zoom calls. However you've decided to measure that, gather that information, and then understand how does your matrix, or that group of partners that you work with, really show up. And depending on who the partners you're looking at are, you may have assessed them in different ways. So your partners in accounting, your partners in social media. You aren't looking at them the same way necessarily, but you might have a level of service or an expectation around price. But just try to understand, what do the comparison and contrast look like? Are there parts of your partnerships that are very, very solid? Your service providers are all really fantastic, but your product providers are raising prices or they're not shipping on time. Try to prioritize where your pain points are. Because when you reflect on and think about what your next steps are going to be, you have to look at all of your partners together, certainly, but understand what the data is telling you and what do you need to learn more about. Build out that question list of what would you want to ask your partners on if you either don't understand the performance or you're concerned about it, or you know where your business is going and where these data points are, what this information is showing you about your current partnerships might not be able to take you there. So take that time to reflect on the information that you've gathered and think about what and how you want to start framing that conversation. And unfortunately, as we've all seen, there's so many businesses that are under pressure, that are closing. It is putting some amounts of negative pressure on a lot of partnerships in a lot of different ways. So a conversation I've had a lot this summer is, when do I know when it's time to move on? If I've taken this assessment with my key partners, I'm looking at whatever the metrics of importance are to me, it's just not where it needs to be, and I'm worried that my business is at risk. This is a point where I try to balance the priorities and the commitment you have to your consumers with showing up what I'm calling business grace, or a level of conscious consumerism and partnerships that you can have. So where you're able to build a partnership or at least understand what a path forward would be, I do encourage you to think about that. There's a tremendous amount of work that's put into onboarding a business partner, especially if it's one that you've had for a long time. Think through all that you would need to look for, all that you would need to bring someone else up to speed on if you were to replace that partner. And it's striking the balance of the opportunity cost versus the future benefit. And it's not an easy answer, candidly. But if and as you reflect on business performance not being where it needs to be, I encourage you to really think about what that new level of success looks like. And then also think about how you would want to frame a conversation of performance that is either underperforming or one that you are looking to grow. So you might have a really great business success story that you're building on. And as you sit down to have that conversation with those partners, think through how you can structure that conversation to really make sure that you are on the same page and you can move forward together in a really productive way. So for those of you, again, who might not have a super formal structure to the conversations that you have with the business partners that you're working with, I offer this as just a really straightforward framework whenever you're offering, well, really feedback of any kind. But if you're having a conversation for the first time or you're entering into a new partnership, I encourage you to be very upfront about the goals that you have for how you want to work together and what you want conversations like this to deliver in terms of value, but also what your expectations are on performance. This, again, might be called out very clearly in a contract that you've already built, but it might not. So make sure that you are laying out the expectations of these are the critical things that I want to make sure that we as partners are looking at a consistent basis. And as you've looked at and assessed performance of this partner, share with them what you learned, what surprised you, what concerned you, and then really be upfront with them about the value that you see your partnership providing, or that specific metric, how that delivers value within your partnership or the service they're providing. And then be really clear about how you want to move forward. This is what I learned. This is the performance that I would expect. And then outline what those next steps look like. I'd like to talk about this again in a month, in a quarter. Maybe it's day by day and week by week in your business space, but whatever that cadence is of how often you want to have the conversation, and then the performance or the behavior that either needs to be changed or put into place to ensure that you're moving forward towards those common goals. And that's also why I think questions are such a critical part of this conversation. Again, any feedback conversation, not just business partnerships, certainly, but really make sure that you're giving the opportunity throughout the process to ask questions and give the partner an opportunity to ask questions, but then also you are bringing questions to the table as well. So things that either didn't make sense to you or seem different, just to ensure that you are taking the opportunity to realign on what your expectations and understanding are. This also gives the opportunity for the business partner you're working with to be able to share and be open about what their business plans and strategies are too, because just as your business is changing, certainly theirs might be as well. And your understanding of where their business is going is only going to help you think about how your partnership can continue to really grow and deepen. And that is definitely the theme of the summer for me, is how are you able to structure a conversation that really opens up the discussion, gives you opportunity to add more value. Because whether you're in crisis mode and you're trying to solve something very critical within your business, or you're maybe excited to capture a new opportunity and offer value in a way you never have before, your partners more often than not are the ones that are going to be your first cheerleaders, first supporters, and the teams that are going to be most invested in helping you get it right, so that you're able to deliver to your customers and clients. And you know you've got the best partners you can when they're just as committed to satisfying and delighting your clients and consumers as you are, quite candidly. So yeah, I know we're coming up a little bit on time. I appreciated the conversation and everyone taking the opportunity to take me up on my offer for questions. So we have a few minutes left. I'm curious if there's anyone on the call today who's had a really fantastic conversation or a challenging conversation with a partner that you're still trying to think through. How do you move forward with it, or how much you structure a tough conversation that maybe you are avoiding because you haven't really jumped in with both feet to set it up yet. It sounds like you are all amazing business partners that have upfront conversations with all of your partners. Set clear expectations. So I congratulate you on that.
Well, I know I appreciated the way you just helped to define a very large part of our business. But really, I think if I could just summarize it, right, just identify the who and the why. What would success look like, and then how do you assess the process? So bringing structure around something very complex is always super helpful for me. I know that those were some of my takeaways.
Awesome. It's almost like you saw the deck, Rob, and you knew I was going to bring it all back together.
Well, I may have had a preview, but
maybe. No, I appreciate that. And that's really what I have found, that when I get tripped up in a partnership and I get concerned about work that I've done or I'm supporting one of my clients, there's usually an element of one of these steps that either I didn't take time to walk through, or that the partner that I'm working with didn't. But all of these pieces, I would say, have been impacted by having to respond to anything quickly, but specifically this summer with so many elements of many businesses changing. I found that regrounding in these 4 pieces of business development and partnership are really been a helpful way to keep businesses on the same page and finding ways to move forward. And it's been challenging circumstances, but there have definitely been opportunities to capture wins and be really excited about business growth. And my intent for you today was hopefully to give you a space and a structure to do that in a way that really helps you move forward and do everything for your business that you can and your clients. So I know we're just in the last couple of minutes. For everyone who registered, I've asked Rob to send out a really simple little 2-page document that helps you just go through the thought exercise of thinking through what those partnerships are that you can start to focus on and how might you define success, and really bring that conversation to life with them. So look for that. It's super easy to do. And in our last winding moment, I just want to say thank you. I really appreciate everyone taking their time today and providing questions and conversations. Partnerships, as I said earlier, is something I'm very, very passionate about, certainly in the retail space, but I am happy to continue this conversation with you regardless of your industry, and would certainly encourage you to reach out and connect. I've got my email there. I am always on LinkedIn. I rarely tweet, and I do share some things on the website as well. So I invite you to connect with me in that way.
Well, I appreciate it, Julie. This was a fun conversation, and I think something that's very relevant, because I think that if going through this, some of our business partners maybe come in and they look like heroes for us right now. They're still able to keep us going today. And then there's others that may have us doing that assessment piece and seeing if we might look at other options potentially, and making sure that our business stays healthy too. So I appreciate it. For sure. And in closing, I'll do a quick little plug here. So the next Club E Digital for Maple Grove is going to be on October 13th. And we'll have Mike Kennedy from Astra talking about cybersecurity. So with all this data that's being thrown around across the internet and what do they call it? The dark web, right? I think it's so mysterious sounding, but all this data that we're throwing around, how do we keep it secure? And I think Mike has a great story to tell, and I'm excited to bring that to the group here next month.
Mark your calendars. That sounds fantastic.
It's gonna be pretty good. It'll be pretty good. So I want to thank everybody for showing up today. I'll send out the little 2-pager here that Julie was so nice to put together. And yeah, if there's anything we could do for you, just let us know. Thanks again to our sponsors, Compass Realty, Skull Marketing, and SDK CPAs. And with that, it's 1 o'clock. Have a great rest of your day, folks.
Thanks,
Thank
Julie.
you.
Rob.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Thanks, guys. See ya.